I feel quite confident that most of you watching have probably played all Pokemon games, possibly more than once. But even if we have traveled through these regions more times than we can count, I still think there are locales to be found niche that aren't exactly what we associate with their games, to say the least. Some places are just really forgettable, sometimes because there's nothing of value there, other times because the other places are simply more memorable. Well, that is exactly what I want to talk about today. What are the most forgettable locations in every Pokemon region? And just to keep things more interesting, only named locations qualify. After all, otherwise all winners would be some random route, and where's the fun in that? Let's get started in Kanto, which is easily the hardest region of this entire video. After all, it is among the smallest and obviously also the one that started it all, with plenty of locations that could have ended up becoming forgettable, now instead becoming borderline iconic. And to make things even more difficult on myself and not take the easy way out, I've also decided not to include the Sevi Islands. Because, yeah, otherwise it would easily be a location somewhere out there. The Sevi Islands can't exactly run with mainline Kanto in terms of recognizability. But similarly to routes, going for the Sevi Islands wouldn't be fun, so I'm gonna force myself to pick the most forgettable location in mainland Kanto, no matter how hard it is. And yeah, it is actually really hard. Nearly every location in Kanto is visited as part of the story, and some of the locations you have very little reason to ever return to have actually turned out to be extremely iconic, like Pallet Town or Lavender Tower. If I really had to pick a location you're forced to visit, my vote would go to Rock Tunnel, which is definitely a bit of an overshadowed cave, but since Kanto does have a few optional areas, I feel like going for one of those makes more sense. And that does mean that my pick might be controversial to some, seeing as it literally houses a legendary Pokemon, but I think it's the Power Plant. Think about it. Sure, it has Zapdos, that's a big boon, but that's also literally its only boon. It's completely out of the way. By the time you can access it, you have no natural reason to visit Route 10 anymore, which I would argue makes it quite prone to being forgotten. It's also not exactly the most memorable place in Kanto from a dungeon perspective. Compare it to Seafoam Islands. One has a pretty tricky puzzle, the other you just walk through. If you ask me, what location in Kanto are you most likely to have forgotten to visit by the time the credits roll, it's the Power Plant. You simply don't need to go here unless you want Zapdos, which I admit is something you're probably gonna want, so it's not like the Power Plant is some unknown location no one knows, but compared to the rest of Kanto and the many iconic locations it holds, it has to lose out for me. Onto Johto, which definitely has a much higher number of forgettable locations, partly because it significantly ups the number of optional areas, while also having more places introduced in the remake rather than chucking them away on an island archipelago somewhere like Kanto did. So yeah, if we're speaking strictly, I would say the winner of Johto has to be Cliff Cave. Newly added in Heart Gold and Soul Silver, this is the mountainside cave en route to the Safari Zone, which is already quite forgettable to begin with, I would argue. It's also a semi-optional location that you don't need to visit, and the cave itself is merely a route. There isn't anything in or around it that you would ever want to return for. And I mean that, by the way. There isn't even a single wild Pokemon unique to Cliff Cave. You have no reason to ever come back here. But if you really want to be a purist and demand a location that's available in every Johto game, then I think the answer has to be Tojo Falls, especially based on the way it appears in Gen 2. At the very least, the remakes added a quite memorable Giovanni event here, but in the originals, the Tojo Falls serve as a way to get from Johto to Kanto the first time, and that's about it. No exclusive Pokemon, not even a single trainer. The only possible reason not to pick it is that Tojo Falls is technically in Kanto and not in Johto, but nah, it's literally on the border and only appears in Johto-based games, so I'd say it counts. Next up is Hoenn, of course, where for the very first time there is actually a settlement that's a viable candidate. Although, does Evergrande City even qualify as a settlement if there's literally nothing here? Why this place is to be considered a city is an all-time mystery. It by all accounts makes zero sense. All this place is a Poké Center before Victory Road, even calling it a town or a village would be a bridge too far, let alone city. But despite consisting of literally one building, Evergrande City is not my winner, simply because Hoenn has a lot of optional, forgettable, yet named locations that have not exactly built up a reputation for being forgettable, like Evergrande City has. What about Altering Cave, for example? An emerald-only location that was meant to be super unique, but now just houses Zubat. I guess it can consider itself lucky that its story is quite memorable, otherwise it would be up here. Artisan Cave in the Battle Frontier is also incredibly forgettable, housing nothing but Smeargle, and is one of the most pointless locations in Pokemon ever, and yet it still loses out to my winner, the Scorched Slab. While Oras did fix this place up a bit, adding Heatran to it for example, I still don't think that helps make it all the more memorable following the absolute embarrassment this cave is in the original games. In Ruby, Sapphire and Emerald, this one-room cave on Route 120 literally houses nothing more than the TM for Sunny Day. Why? Why did that warrant its own named cave? Well, the reason is that it's a reference to a real-life cave in Japan where, according to myths, the sun god Amaterasu locked itself inside, explaining why Sunny Day is found here. But does that make it any less forgettable? I would argue no. Sinnoh does make things a bit easier for us again, with several clear standouts in a forgettable sense of the word. I feel like the area before Turnback Cave, which is obviously quite memorable itself, isn't exactly among the most memorable locations in Sinnoh, but Sandoff Springs still loses the questionable title to the location to answer the question, what if the power plant didn't have a legendary Pokemon inside? The Fuego Ironworks is, in my opinion, probably the most forgettable, significant location in Pokemon history. Just like the power plant, you can't initially visit the place and have to go out of your way to return here later, but unlike the power plant, there honestly isn't much of a reason to do so. A Firestone is the grand reward for completing the mini dungeon inside and reaching Mr. Fuego. Don't get me wrong, by the way, I really like optional locations like this and would love to see more of them simply because they reward exploring, so I'm not saying the Fuego Ironworks is a bad location or something. It is, however, incredibly forgettable. That's undeniable, I would say. Unova increases the number of options by a great deal once again. Not only do we of course have both Black and White 1 and 2 to account for, there's also the simple fact that exploration and not mandatory locations peaked here, meaning that this is the region where we have the most options to cover. First of all, Anvil Town. A post-game village that the game doesn't really do much to guide you towards, nor does it even really reward you for visiting it with something super substantial. A good candidate. I also noted down Lentamass Town for being the only Black and White 2 exclusive city to not have anything super noteworthy in it, but compared to Anvil Town and the other places yet to come, I would say it's memorable enough to at least not win. You see, Unova also has quite a high number of caves that really don't serve much of a purpose and are quite often exclusive to one of two games to boot. Clay Tunnel hails from Black and White 2 and just like Anvil Town is a post-game area that houses not a whole lot. It does provide access to the Regis, but seeing as this is now the third generation in a row where you could catch the whole batch, that doesn't do much to make it more memorable, I would argue. Unova also has locations like the Abyssal Ruins, which may hold super interesting lore, but is probably the most well-hidden location in Pokemon history, and Seaside Cave, which is incredibly unremarkable, but at the very least a mandatory location to visit. And so my vote goes towards essentially Black and White's version of Clay Tunnel, Challenger's Cave. Everything about this is a recipe for disaster. It's again post-game, there's nothing here except for some items and non-Unovan Pokemon, and once you have passed through it once, there's no reason to ever come back. It's a close call in Unova, there's a lot of candidates, but I think Challenger's Cave is the most likely one to not ring a bell. We go from a region with a gazillion options to the only one with a clear and obvious winner, Kalos. This region barely has optional areas to speak of, and it's another small region, but most of all, there is one location that is so incredibly forgettable and pointless, it has to win. Introducing the Chamber of Emptiness. A small cave with literally nothing else except for a spooky plate. Oh, and a Megastone for Banette, but only in the post-game and only if the time of day is between 8 and 9 PM. It's like the Scorched Slab if Auras never existed. Easily the most pointless named location Pokemon has ever seen. And its only real threat as to winning that questionable title is that it's so pointless that it has become memorable. But honestly, I don't think it has even really done that. Just an embarrassment of a location, really. The trend of mandatory locations only continues for Alola, which is a bit of a shame from a gameplay standpoint, but also means there's actually not too many forgettable locales in the region. I think the forgettable standouts here though are once again the caves, particularly a duo that offers very little value. First up, Seaward Cave. This sports a super low Pokémon count, with only the Island Scan Totodile and Squirtle worth mentioning, and zero reason to ever come back once you followed its path towards Kalai Bay. But its sole redeeming factor is that in Ultra Moon, you battle Soliera of the Ultra Recon Squad here, making it at least ever so slightly plot relevant. Its main competitor, Sandy Cave, has absolutely nothing going for it though. This is an Ultra Game exclusive location right off Big Wave Beach, which is already worrying, but also an extremely small, completely optional and missable cave, and it houses literally nothing except for Psyduck, Zubat, a Big Pearl, a Light Clay, and a TM for Thunderbolt. That's it. If you can live without those, you never have to visit Sandy Cave whatsoever, and if you did visit it, you could forget about it the moment you step foot outside it. Next up is Galar, and from here things get very difficult. After all, it's at this point that the region starts opening up, and while that does mean the number of named locations only grows, it also means there's suddenly a lot of overlap and less, oh this is a dedicated cave, but rather this random hill has a name now. But I've really tried to see through this and try to find locations that fit the spirit of this video, so places that don't just feel like random routes except now named. For example, for this reason, I decided not to go for Modestoke Outskirts, which for some bizarre reason is named, despite being a small route in everything but the word. Instead, my answer can be found in one of the DLC areas, being the Crown Tundra specifically, and is the location in Galar that I would consider easiest to miss. The Frigid Sea. There is no mandatory reason for you to ever come here, first of all, which is already rare in Galar to begin with. And there is also the way to get here, which is not exactly clear and obvious. The Roaring Sea Caverns leads from Giant's Foot to Frigid Sea and is quite well hidden, with the map not being much of help either. And as a cherry on top, the Frigid Sea has nothing you really need to see. It has exclusive Pokémon, dens, footprints and items as every place in Galar or the Crown Tundra has, but you can complete the game perfectly fine without ever coming here or returning here. So yeah, in a very difficult region due to how it's designed, I think this is my winner, but I'm definitely curious to hear your thoughts on this one. Now, due to being sheer impossible, I'm gonna skip Hisui and go straight to Paldea, which is not much easier to be honest, but simply the fact it isn't entirely designed to be untamed nature like Hisui is, means that it at least tries to be memorable in its general areas, if you get what I mean. It doesn't always succeed though. Inlet Grotto is an area every player has visited, since it's mandatory and super early in the game, but I suspect the number of people who ever returned here is exceptionally low. Like, less than 10%, easy. Is that enough to consider it forgettable though? I'm not sure. Zapapico as a town is also a solid candidate, due to the fact that you can literally never visit it and miss out on absolutely nothing except an Armarouge or Cerulege. Cool Pokémon, don't get me wrong, but if that is everything your town has to offer, you're in trouble. However, there is one more named location in Paldea that I'm willing to go as far as to say you might genuinely not even know has a name. So, does Colonnade Hollow mean anything to you? It's listed as one of the 10 sites of Paldea, and in that context has a name, but it's very easy to miss. It's the odd mountainous structure found next to Asado Desert, hardly something that really stands out, but I don't think it really qualifies as random hill either. It's a pretty unique landmark, all things considered. It is, however, also a very forgettable landmark, I would say, and wouldn't you know it, that's exactly what we're looking for. And considering how difficult Paldea makes it for us with its open world, I'm gonna lock this one in as our final winner. But what are your thoughts? Do you agree with my picks? Or are there other locations in Pokemon you frequently forget exist? Share it in the comments below. If you enjoyed this video, please consider giving it a like and subscribe to the channel to stay updated on all my future Pokemon content coming up. For now, thanks for watching and enjoy the rest of your day.